to the Past, or as it's titled in its Japanese version, The Legend of Zelda: Triforce of the Gods. Nintendo of America changed the name to A Link to the Past due to their censorship guidelines discouraging religious context. Because of this name change when I was younger, I didn't understand the story and always assumed the Dark World was Hyrule in the past, as opposed to another reflective realm of Hyrule where the Triforce was housed. Thankfully, it didn't affect the gameplay, and I've since learned my mistake, which only enhanced my experience playing the game. That wasn't the only change to the localization into English either. In Japanese, Aghanim was a priest, whereas he's a wizard in the English version. The large fairy was known as Megami, or goddess. The Book of Medora had Egyptian symbols, whereas in the English version, they are random meaningless figures. And certain locations were renamed as well, such as the church becoming a sanctuary and the priest therein becoming a sage, which subsequently changed the 7 sages into the 7 wise men. However, in the Game Boy Advance port, they are once again named the 7 sages. We see the sages seal Ganon in Ocarina of Time, which was originally planned to be a prequel to Link to the Past, forming the events of the Imprisoning War mentioned in the prologue of this game. However, that was scrapped, although still taking place before A Link to the Past in the Fallen timeline. There are many more years between the two, resulting in Ocarina of Time happening long before the Imprisoning War. However, there are counter-arguments to the points I just made, and the story inconsistencies could be attributed to mere retcon and change in the story. I could dive deeper into this subject, but I feel like the developers at some point decided an interesting game with a unique story to fit that game's narrative took precedent over a coherent timeline. Although there can still be traces, as both Wind Waker and Twilight Princess mention key elements from Ocarina of Time, and are each set roughly 100 years later in their respective timelines. A crucial entry to the series, The Legend of Zelda 3, A Link to the Past, radically changed what the series is, and it echoed far into the series. Its changes are seen up until Breath of the Wild. This game introduced rich lore into the series and some of the biggest staples. We see, like previous entries, a deviation from gameplay, resulting in a more similar fashion as the first game, top-down style as opposed to the side-scrolling adventure of Link. Link starts off the game sleeping. He's awoken by Zelda on a dark, rainy night. The game starts you off into the game right away. Maybe one of the best introductions to any Zelda game, as the only way it holds your hand is forcing you to go towards the castle and find your way in. When you enter, you find your uncle immediately, and he easily could have told Link about the secret entrance, explaining how Link knows where to go on repeat playthroughs. After the dungeon of Hyrule Castle, you're directed to Kakariko Village, and the game truly begins. Taking on the Eastern and Desert Palaces, then the Tower of Hera, Link collects the 3 pendants of wisdom, courage, and power. The pendants give you the experience needed to pull the Master Sword from the pedestal in the Lost Woods. I love the touch of seeing the animals before and after, giving a sense of purity and sacredness to where the sword has been laid to rest. After fighting Aghanim and ultimately losing, Link is sent to the Dark World to remove this annoyance from Aghanim's dastardly plan. However, unbeknownst to the wizard, Link helped an old man get to Death Mountain earlier, who gifted him the magic mirror, allowing him to return to the Light World anytime he desired. Link also obtained the Moon Pearl in the Tower of Hera, protecting him from the transformative power of the evil realm, allowing Link to continue his quest, rescuing the maidens from their respective dungeons and ending Aghanim's plan. Each dungeon in the Dark World is conveniently numbered on Link's map, which is fortunate as it aids the player in knowing their next step, and each one with their own unique design. The first dungeon in the Dark World is the Dark Palace, in the same location as the Eastern Palace where Link finds the magic hammer, allowing him to get to the second dungeon, the Swamp Palace, which is where you find out that what you do in one realm can affect the other, and finding the hookshot. The Skull Woods is a unique design, requiring Link to travel both in and out of the dungeon, obtaining the Fire Rod to make short work of the dungeon boss, Mothula. After, you go to the Thieves' Town. This dungeon takes place entirely below Thieves' Town, where Kakariko stands in the Light World. Link obtains the Titan's Mitt, allowing Link to lift extremely heavy objects. The next dungeon is the Ice Palace, which is only enterable from a portal in the Light World, and it gives Link the Blue Mill, reducing Link's damage considerably. After is Misery Mire, requiring the Ether Medallion to enter, giving Link the Cane of Samaria, which allows Link to create blocks or even platforms. Next is Turtle Rock. Much like the previous dungeon, requires one of the game's 3 medallions, but this one is the Quake Medallion. This dungeon gives Link the Mirror Shield. Rescuing the 7 maidens from the previous 7 dungeons allows Link to break the protective barrier surrounding this tower, and Link enters, obtains the Red Mail, and fights Aghanim once again. Losing this time, Aghanim turns into Ganon, showing his true identity and the real reason for how everything went dark in this world. Transforming into a bat, Ganon flies from the tower to the Golden Pyramid, challenging Link to a final duel to decide his fate. What happens in this scene may be one of, if not my favorite little details of the game. From the very start of Link being thrust into the Dark World, you can see Ganon's Tower in the background, foreshadowing the final dungeon, and starting on top of where the end of the game would eventually take place, making the entire journey come full circle to where it all began. Link takes his final dive into the Golden Pyramid, faces off against the King of Evil, and obtains the full Triforce, allowing him to return not just Hyrule to its glory, but also revive his uncle from the dead, showcasing the true power of the Triforce. A Link to the Past redefines the series and showcased how deep the lore of Zelda could be, opening the door to the greatest game and redefined gaming as a whole in Ocarina of Time. Thank you for taking the time to watch this little video about why I love this game so much. Next I'll be talking about why I love Majora's Mask. We'll see you next time.